box model, the main building block in every CSS layout in every HTML document. Even Forrest Gump was aware of how important box model is.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
So CSS really comes down to two rules. One, everything can be treated like a box. And two, if you don't know the box model, you're gonna have bad time. Alright, so let's have a look at the box model in practice, shall we? So before we begin, let's go into random website like google.com and let's open the DevTools and let's actually have a look at those elements that are on the page. So let's look at the image, and as you can see, whatever I hover over, any element is basically a rectangle, which corresponds to the box shape model, to the box model that we'll be talking about. Anything can be, although for example you've got some image, although you've got the search bar which has those, carved borders, everything is basically a rectangle. That's why it's called box model. As you can see, this Gmail images, all those links, everything can be treated as a model that has some rectangular shape and some content written into it. The image of my profile is basically it's a circle, however it's treated as a rectangle, and that's how the position is being used within the page, with corners at the top left and so on. And because it's a circle, there are some shenanigans applied to add either borders which have some kind of radius that make it a circle. So the mask of the image is there's an applied mask. In a nutshell, anything is a rectangle, a box. Just go onto any page and hover over any element to see that the DevTools highlight the box that the image is being written into. Okay, so let's go back to our code pen. So yeah, I've got some generic div. If we go into HTML, it's just generic div, basically two pieces, but we'll look at one for the moment, with very generic setting of font size, color, font weight, font family, and I've applied zero margin, zero padding to all the stuff on the page because I want to customize it with the custom box class. So let's look at the box class now. So our box that we'll be talking about, or basically a generic piece of content that will be used as an example, is just a content written into it. And what I've just highlighted is basically the actual content. So let's inspect that piece. It's being, selected in the tree, and here in the Computed tab in our DevTools, we can see very great visualization of the box model. And the box model says that every element actually consists of 4 parts. We've got the content itself, which is labeled here with the blue color, and on the page you will see that's blue as well. So basically the text in this case could be image, could be icon, or SVG image as well. So basically image or text. And sometimes you'll see things like, just only borders, which are created in order to make it look like an, line, arrow, or something like that. But basically it's either text or image. There's really nothing more on the website. Website consists of text and images, all of which are, written into some kind of rectangle that are put into organized hierarchy, and that's how you receive the look of the website. Anyway, so we've got the content here, then we've got the padding, and padding is actually some additional space that divides the content and the border. So we've got the image or the So then you've got padding, which is basically free space that's not occupied by content and divides content and the border. So our element is contained within the border, which may or may not be visible. The border might be 1 pixel wide. However, inside the border, so at the moment the border is 10 pixels, let's make it 0. So you can see that there is thanks. So there is the content inside, right? And then we've got the padding, which is just free space around the content. And the border, just, you can't see it really here at the moment, but the border encapsulates the item, which consists of content and padding. It's funny because padding could be interpreted as a margin that you see, for example, on an actual printed document page. So you've got the content and you've got the margin. However, in CSS, margin is something different. And in this case, margin is the space which serves similar purpose to padding, which gives the room to breathe, or a division between, some elements. But the padding is contained within the item, and margin is contained or just goes beyond the item. And in this case, it's the division is seen by applying the background color property, which we set to tomato, which is fancy shade of red. And as you can see, the padding is the space that the content doesn't go into. However, because it's inside the item still, then the property of background color is being applied to it as well. While margin specifies how much space should be kept between elements, and then background color doesn't apply to it. So let's go back and add the border, which is yet another layer. We could treat border as a similar thing to padding. So the importance of margin can be seen if we add another box. Let's call it box 2, or this one we'll call box 2, and this one will be box 1. And let's add 30, 50, 10 as well. So now we've got 2 boxes of similar size, right? Basically the same size, just the colors are different. And now let's have a look that margin is being applied to both of these boxes. However, when we look at the margin value, we can see that they both share the same margin element, right? So they are both the distance between themselves is 50 pixels, although they both have the margin property. So in this case, if we increase one of these to, let's say, 100, we can see that the margin 100 is now being applied. However, the content item below is now still the margin on left and right, and also on the bottom. However, there's nothing to be spaced from on the bottom. So the margin on the bottom left and right is still being applied as 50 pixels. However, on the top, it's already the value of the other item, which is, so the rule says that the margin applied to the item is always the greater one. If 2 items, which are siblings, they have different values of margin, the greater one is being applied as a spacing between them, not a sum, not some kind of average, the greater value. All right, and then we've got the padding and the border and the padding and the content. One more thing. At the moment, let's inspect the pink one. So at the moment, I've set the width value property to 600. All right. So 600 pixels is actually the width of this inner part of the content, and because the padding and border usually corresponds to the to the look of the website or the element. Like, for example, we've got any button that we've got on the code pen here. Let's go to the sign up button, inspect. As you can see, the content of the button is one thing. The padding around it. Oh, it's green. Okay, let's go to the gray one. So the content and the padding are taken into account to build the whole button, and then we've got also the border and the margin, which is of marginal importance. But basically, we've got border, padding, and the content. Those three elements build up to the whole button, right? So if we set the width of the button to, let's say, 100 pixels, then it would be actually close to 100 pixels, maybe slightly more, right? But the content is set to, let's say, 74 pixels, and we want it to be 74, the whole element we want to be 74 pixels wide, right? What then? Then we'd have to do some shenanigans with calculation that, padding is 16 pixels on left and 16 on right, and we've got a border of 2.667, which is, I don't know who, came up with this value, but they did. And you need to sum all of these and say that all width of the element would be this plus this plus this plus this plus this. And it's one way to do it, but it's a bullshit way to do it. So if we want to have our element be 600 pixel wide, and we want the content property to, the content width to some kind of, shrink and have the whole element from the outer border to the outer border be 600 pixels, then we need to change one property, which will be box sizing border box. And now, as you can see, it shrunk to 600 pixels. And the other is 600 plus all this stuff. But if I take the padding and border, which is 20 pixels on both sides, 60 on both sides, so 80, let's write 520 here. As you can see, now it equals, one equals to the other, because those are two different approaches to the same thing, right? And the box sizing border box is it's a useful thing. However, in all the general cases, by default, we've got box sizing content box value applied, which changes nothing because that's the default value. It was there in the first place. I have just now written it out. So yeah, well, that's it. And as a bonus, because you've been so good listener, I will tell you that there is one more property which may sound like it's part of the box model family, but actually it's not. But there is a property called outline, which you can apply to create something like second border around the original border. So let's add it here, outline 10 pixels solid black. And as you can see, although we've got this box sizing border box and the width is set to some value, the actual border, the outline, let's make it even thicker, it goes outside of the element, and it has no regards to the margin, padding, whatever the values are set on the parent element or anything. Because if we even increase this further, let's say 70 pixels, you can see that it just overlaps all the other elements. So basically, outline is not treated as a part of elements dimensions, meaning that as far as the dimensions, positioning, and relative, sizing, etc., it stops at the border. So then there is the margin, which is treated as this empty space outside the element, but the size of the element itself finishes at the border. We've got the outline, which we can use for some particular things, which mostly I've seen it being used on buttons or some kind of elements to show that it's, for example, focused, mainly input fields, input fields and buttons, but not often. So yeah, that's box model. And alright, thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next video.